All right, we're live. I'm gonna give it a few minutes for people to jump on and for me to pour my whiskey tonight. Going with Elmer T. Lee. Um, it's a bottle I actually won at a lottery. It's the only bottle I've ever won at a lottery. And full disclosure, this is not my first glass of the night because I had to get myself ready for this. Look at that. This is actually this is my second time ever using OBS. It's like a streaming software for YouTube, Facebook, that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, this is the first time I've had it set up kind of decently. So we'll see how it works. I'm sure there's going to be some bugs, but yeah, we'll get through it. I can already actually see some messages popping up, some comments, so that's good. It's the first time I've had the embedded kind of comments in the studio. So yeah. Oh man, that's good stuff. Rach, hey, yeah, it's actually working. Although, since you decided to drain the bathtub right while I was doing this, it sounds like a waterfall down here. All right, so we got about 10 people on. Give it another minute or so before we get started. Brady, I'm drinking Elmer T. Lee. Um, I I won that bottle in a lottery that we have here. It's only a $40 bottle. It's actually really cheap, but it you can't get it on the shelves. You can only get it through lottery. So that's what I'm having tonight, and it is delicious. What's up? What's up? And I definitely have kind of a list of just a rough idea of what we'll go over, but glad to see people here. Ask any questions you want along the way, any clarification you need on anything. Um, and then probably at the end, we can get to any other random stuff you guys want to talk about. Happy to do so. And yeah. All right, cool. So let's get started. All right, so first thing I just wanted to do was give a little bit of overview on myself. I'm sure most of you have an idea of kind of what I do for the most part, but um, I started my background in tuning and building cars in general is I had about 8 years in building and tuning Mazda speeds. So the MZR Dizzy for the LTG guys, if you don't know, it's a very similar engine, though it's a 2.3, but it's one of the first direct injected 4-cylinder turbo cars that came out, and that's really where I got my start in tuning, got my start in building cars. That's where I learned to fabricate stuff because I didn't want to wait on anybody anymore for the parts I needed for my car, and then that's where I started tuning because I wanted an understanding of everything that was going on. I never liked kind of sitting on the outside. Um, a lot of people are fine with that. It just wasn't for me. But that platform was a great teaching tool for me. It taught me everything I could ever imagine about direct injection, which at the time was brand new. Funny enough, um, you know, with this platform, it seems like it's still brand new, which is kind of weird. It feels in a lot of ways like back at the beginning of my tuning journey with the Mazda speeds. But so I did that for about 8 years or so. Kind of got out of that and went a different route. Picked up the Caddy, and the rest is history. I built that. Started on the turbo kits, fuel kits, and so on. So um, as far as tuning goes, uh, I think it's probably now the biggest thing holding the platform back. We have what I would consider a select few very good tuners. One of them, Coop, just joined right now. Good to see you. And outside of that, it's kind of just you really have no idea, and it's unfortunately given the engine a bad name. So everybody knows all what everybody says about the engines being glass and whatnot. Um, it's it is, and I think at the end of the day, the reason that it can be that is a lot of people who came over to this platform tuning wise came over from other GM platforms that were not necessarily turbo four cylinder direct injected. And the few people who came over from a platform like the LNF and the Cobalts that were all of those things, um, this is a vastly different tuning experience than even that. So you have this group that understands and has understood the Gen 5 GM ECMs, and that's what computers are powering the LTGs. But that group was largely guys who just tuned V8s, naturally aspirated for the most part, but then understood how to tune something with a blower, maybe a turbo setup on top of that. When you take that group of people and put them into a four-cylinder turbo application, I've seen that the tendency has been to tune the four-cylinder turbo in the way you would tune a V8. That's not how you keep a four-cylinder turbo car together. It's just not. And people will disagree with me on different things, and that's totally fine. But that is one of the main issues that I've seen in some of the tuning on these that I've seen. And we'll get into that a little bit later with kind of where you can see that as far as if you look at different dyno graphs from different tuners, things like that. So this is a black box of an ECU. It's a lot of calculations where they don't need to be. It's overcomplicated. It's the worst thing I've ever laid my eyes on, honestly. But it gets the job done. I think there's ways to take some of the complexity out of it to make it a more consistent experience. And that's what I've done in some of my tuning. But overall, it's the LTG at the end of the day. It needs fuel, it needs air, it needs a spark, and it'll make power. The engine itself is built to make power just fine. It can make power at RPM. The head flows well. It's not a unicorn of an engine. It's the ECM that can really cause people to think that. So, with that said, we can get into some of the initial HP tuner stuff. All right. So we're going to go through a bunch of the tables. What I have loaded up here is a demo map that I threw together for this, specifically for this purpose, and a compare file open that is a bone stock map. Now, a bunch of disclaimers first. Do not try to screenshot any of this and use the numbers here. I promise you, while some of them will work, most of them will likely not, and you will blow your shit up. So please do not do that. Number two, depending on the year of your car, you may have some other tables. You may have some tables that look vastly different. I'll try to point that out a little bit when we get to some of those, like the driver demand tables, for instance. So those are two big things. But overall, I just want to go through and try to shed some light on the way that the torque is being managed for these engines, and why I think it's a poor design from the factory, how I think you can get over it correctly, and how I think other companies and tuners can get past those torque limiters quickly, but not safely, and not the best experience for you guys. So what we're going to start with, bring my notes up here. All right, so we're going to start with the way in general that torque management, and that's what you'll hear referred to as torque management, how torque management leads to reduced power, how it affects power in general, and how GM implements that. So torque management, there have been torque-based ECUs forever, PCM, ECM, ECU, depending on your manufacturer, all those words are used. But there have been torque-based ECUs for forever. The Mazdas were torque-based. The difference is most of those other torque-based ECUs, it's all based on targeting a torque, and you're working up to that level, is what we'll say, right? So you basically have everything set up where you have these limiters, but they're pretty high, and in general they're built as safeguards. Okay, so for the most part, you're not meant to hit these limiters in most other ECMs. Okay, with the Gen 5 GMs and the way they implement torque management and just torque control at all and torque shaping, they implement it, one, with all calculations and not direct requests. It's all backwards. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's overcomplicated, and that's not because I'm tired of looking at it that I'm saying that. It's because it's totally unnecessary, and it provides no extra drivability or anything like that to the end user. So that's the first part. It's calculated versus any direct request. The second part of it, and this is where I really believe you can open things up, is it's built to not work up to these safeguards. It's built to ride on these limiters. Okay, so it's going to request all the throttle and all the wastegate duty cycle to bring boost up, and then it's going to hit that limiter and it's going to ride it like this, right? And what you'll hear a lot of people talking about on these from the factory is it's super inconsistent. One day it'll feel good, one pull it'll feel good, the next one it won't. And also that it just never feels free. And that's one thing, the biggest thing that I noticed as an owner of one of these is the car never felt free from the factory, free to rev, free to, right? And that's really because it's built to ride the limit. It's like your suspension riding bump stops constantly, right? It's never going to be a smooth, consistent, quality ride. So now we'll get into just ways that torque management can limit when those limiters are hit, which is almost constantly. So the first thing, and everybody, this is the one that everybody will know, is your throttle. So if you exceed a torque limit, your throttle will close. Everybody here probably knows that throttle closure is a huge issue. You've heard about it from tuners. You've heard about it from anybody who's taken a data log on one of these. Throttle closure is a huge issue. That is one of the initial things that the ECM uses to regulate that torque. So when you go a certain amount over one of the torque limiters, throttle closes, less air comes in, less power, so on. Okay, so that's the first one is throttle. The second one, which is less intrusive, it can just affect your desired map or your desired boost level. This one is basically just gonna say, okay, instead of 15 or 18 pounds of boost, right now I only want to, I only want 12 pounds of boost. So it will limit your desired boost level. After that, another one that's not very intrusive, but is there, especially when you get into some bigger power stuff. It will limit your wastegate duty cycle so that even if your desired boost is up, your wastegate duty cycle will not raise to actually meet that desired boost. Okay. And then fourth, you will get false knock retard that will not go away. It is absolutely not real knock. It will cause all kinds of issues that real knock can also cause, but it is the false KR knock retard will kick in if you exceed limits. The other thing that torque management can do, it can cause a bad idle. It can cause low timing at idle, which you'll very much notice. It can cause a jumpy idle. So torque management itself can affect all of those things. I'm seeing that people are having some network stuff. It could definitely be me. Hopefully it's not too bad. And we can get through this. I wonder if there's anything else I can do from my side. Let me try one thing, guys. All right. It's looking like the network is just shit right now. Just trying to get rid of me and see if that helps. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm an IT guy. It's, fake IT, I would say. But yeah, I'm terrible at hardware things. All right. Well, fuck it. We'll try again. I promise I'm coming back. All right. Let's try this again. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe it won't. But so, where did we leave off? Where did we leave off? All right, we went through basically everything that torque management can do once you hit the limiters, how some very intrusive ways like the throttle, some other ways that are less intrusive. And now we can just get into the tables. All right, so we're going to start with basically just limiters. Um, this is under torque management general. Again, maybe in different places for you, depending on if you have MPVI 1, 2, and depending on which ECM you have, so which year car you have. All right, so first one we're going to get. Yeah, see, so everybody, if you pause for a little bit and then try, YouTube threw the error for me that said it's basically just not receiving a fast enough stream to not make it buffer on your end. So if you pause for a little and let it buffer, you can get back. I promise if you guys have questions, I'll wait a while at the end and come back and answer them. All right. So we'll go first peak torque, brake torque, overboost limit. Okay. These are essentially all the same type of data that you're going to see. These are random numbers that I have in here again. What I will tell you with these, if we compare them to stock, you can see, so blue numbers mean lower than the stock file, red numbers mean higher than the stock file. Okay, so this is saying that this is 383 pound-feet higher than stock is what this is requesting. So what I will tell you guys with this, it is while it is a hard limiter, usually the way that I see it affect things is in one of those less intrusive ways, where it affects desired boost, or it affects maybe that your wastegate duty cycle won't go up to meet desired boost, things like that. I will also tell you that number has to be significantly higher than your actual torque to not limit. Okay, it's not a direct limit. So that is not saying that if you pass up your peak torque by 1 pound of boost or 1 pound foot of torque that it's going to limit. It will limit significantly before these numbers. Okay, how much is up to you to find. It seems seemingly different on different cars, but this will limit significantly before this actual number. Okay. Brake torque and overboost, I'm not going to open. They're very similar looking tables, and I set them essentially the same way as the peak torque. Brake torque limit is exactly what it says. How much boost or torque can you make while on the brakes? Overboost limit. This is actually for when you are in an overboost condition with the turbo, which is set somewhere else in the map, but and that will limit it differently. Now, me personally, I set those all the same because if I want to brake boost the car, I want to be able to have all the torque with no limit, and because I run a lot of boost on the car and a crazy setup, I don't even want an overboost. Basically, the overboost setting that this equates to is really in the it's in the indicator light, so it'll throw a check engine light. So I don't really use that at all. Okay. So other things you see here, the Tcs method is different. So this is just going to say how much torque before your traction control won't work, things like that. So these are really simple limiters. Fast torque exit, we don't really need to get into. This is really a manual transmission type thing, and it's really whether it's just a drivability feature. Some people like it, some people don't. So that's the first that we're going over, those just simple limiters. So that's a quick one. The next we're going to go over are kind of the turbo related limits. And get back to my screen there. Okay. Sure. Okay. So here you have what's going to be one of your most important torque management related tables, and that's your boost max limit. So in the old days, a car would just target a certain amount of boost. That's obviously way too simple to do anymore for whatever reason. And that's good. So what this is essentially your target boost. Okay. And while it can from the factory, it's just used as technically a limiter and just one of those other limiters you ride along the whole way. When you're retuning these, you can really use this as a target. And the big way to do that, and we'll get into it in future videos around torque shaping and making the curve that you want, but you can really create this to be the target. But out of the box, this is really a limiter. And it's important to note that this is an absolute pressure. So from the factory, you are not targeting this boost level of 36 psi. You got to take barometric pressure out of that. So that's our boost max limit, very important one. Knock air mass, another important table. I think tripped a lot of people up when they started looking at these. Um, the description on this table, and it's probably important to note that descriptions from HP tuners are not always perfect or remotely close. This is one that they kind of give you half of what you needed to know. So what they tell you about this table is that it essentially is the air mass limit at which your knock protection will go up to, right? So um, if we look at the factory map, that's only going up to a very low air mass. Okay, most of you are probably at $3,000 and up, 3,500 and up at least. You're probably well above this 1.1, 1.2 as far as your actual air mass value. So what they don't really tell you is that it's much more than just not having knock protection after that air mass value. It will also limit the hell out of your power. Okay, it'll close the throttle. It'll do all kinds of stuff that you don't want to pull the power back, because for whatever reason, instead of just using knock retard like it's meant to be, they say, okay, we'll stop using knock retard, but we'll use everything else to limit power. So a table that's, it's seemingly useless but very important if you want to increase your power. And again, this is really all to talk about how do we take the factory tune and how do we increase our power safely. So that's one. Failure air mass, that's another one. This 10 grams a second, I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is one of those that I'm just throwing in numbers. So please do not go off of these numbers, please. But this is just another limiter that is, once you hit a certain air mass, what do I do? And in this case, it's essentially to disable boost altogether, more or less. Okay. Let's see what we got for. Got some chats going on. Okay. Yes, I'd like to see this burnout video. All right. So what do we got next? Okay, so we're going to go into a table that has probably plagued plenty of people at higher RPM. I know it plagued me at the beginning of this, and as soon as I go here, you'll understand why. So this is not in the torque management tab of HP Tuners, at least not the version that I currently have. So under fuel, if you go to, let's get over to our fuel cut. Okay, so we're going to go to our cutoff and decel fuel cut tab. Okay. Again, not probably the first place you would go when you're thinking of a torque limiter. Okay. So on this page, you're going to see all kinds of stuff, right? You're going to see your typical cutoffs that are, from the factory, 67,000, right? You're going to see there's actually a different cutoff for each gear, a bunch of other things that you can play around with that don't pertain to this conversation. We can get into at a different time. But one of the other things that you will see at the very bottom here an acceleration threshold, and then commanded torque and delta and commanded torque. Okay, these tables actually start to limit your power a certain amount of RPM before your actual limiter. Okay, so if your limiter was at 7,000 RPM, and we go to, say, the acceleration threshold table, and now this is even slow on my side. Okay, so if we go to this table for acceleration threshold, what I found would happen here is I could not make power up high at all. And it just felt, and this is on the stock turbo, and it just felt like something was slowing me down. I looked at logs, I found my throttle's closing, I'm not increasing timing, things are just going bad, right? Well, this will actually say, okay, if my limiter is at 7,000 RPM, start limiting me 1,400 RPM before that. In some cases, you can see what the table reads, right? So you'll want to zero that out in most cases, and that will keep your rev limiter truly at the rev limiter that you have. Okay, so these tables are something that if you're having trouble at high RPM, while it's not necessarily going to be the fix, it's definitely somewhere to look. Virtual torque tables are the other, that's a whole other beast that we'll get into another day, and that can affect high RPM performance as well. But this basically, these bottom tables control your rate of acceleration, and so how quickly you're allowed to accelerate, and it will also control a basically pre-limiter to your rev limiter. So, Mark, sorry, man. I'll, it could be my network, and it could be the computer, the PowerPoint stream. It could be the computer. It could be the network. I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot another time and see if I can clean anything up. Probably with some different settings in OBS, I'll be able to do this. Either that, or I'll get rid of the secondary camera. I'll just use my webcam. We'll figure it out one way or another. All right, so we're through that. That's the acceleration based. Again, that will limit the rate of acceleration, how quickly you can increase torque, and how far before your true rev limit you will start being limited by other means. Okay. So that's going to bring us to, I think, our last kind of, yeah. So this will be our last torque management table that I go over. Okay. And this is probably the most important for a lot of reasons. I feel like I'm saying that on all of them. Never mind. They're all the most important, right? So the driver demand tables. Don't worry about the calculated VSS, the torque shaping. These are different on every ECM that I've seen. Some, 13s and 14s have this calculated VSS enabled, some disabled. 15s disabled, enabled. It doesn't really matter. The torque shaping is a big one for manual transmissions. Turn it off. You don't want that. It will override the timing that you're trying to run. You don't want that. But to finish out our torque management, we're going to go to the driver demand tables. All right. And here, let's go to, so this is the table that I threw together. Now, you may see values just like this. In that case, you're lucky because um, these are values that you can directly convert to horsepower. Okay, but you may see values that are in the thousands or tens of thousands. That will be axle torque instead of your engine torque. If you see axle torque, I'm sorry, I don't personally have the conversion for that to make sense of it. But in either case, all this table is doing with your accelerator pedal on the left side and what I've seen on all the ECMs I've looked at for these is your vehicle speed on the top. This is going to request a specific amount of torque based on your accelerator pedal position. Okay, this is your drive-by-wire tables. So, oh man, I had a smash burger recently. I make the best smash burgers actually. There, I'll have to do. You know what? I'll do a live smash burger making sometime, and everybody could learn from that because they're delicious. Um, but for real, this is probably where he could learn because I know there was a lot of misinformation when it comes to driver demand tables. So um, back to that. So all it's doing here is based on your throttle position, how much torque am I requesting? This is a fantastic table. This is where at the end of the day, you can tune the drivability of your car exactly how you want it. Okay, exactly. So there are two portions of this table that I'll go through. Um, 0 mile per hour, 0 RPM, zero throttle position. Don't mess with it. Okay. There's almost no chance that you'll need to mess with this. Okay. This is essentially sort of plays in with your idle. But if you mess with these low throttle and low mile per hour torque requests too much, your car can become very dangerous. Um, I'll leave it at that. Okay, it can just the throttle can just overrun and you're not stopping it. Okay, so we don't mess with those. So midsection, this I would say is like 20 to 40, 50% throttle. This is where your drivability can really be tuned. All right, this is gonna either make your pedal real touchy, real punchy, or it's gonna give it nice and smooth, or it's gonna make it feel laggy, like you have to hit the throttle 100% to get any boost to get the car to go anywhere. Okay, so there's a happy medium for every setup, and that's every different turbo size can have a different every different driver. You can tune this infinitely to your desire. Okay, this can also be used as a somewhat crude version of like a boost by speed in this case, or if you have already the axis is RPM instead of speed, or you can change it. You can do boost by RPM. So this can be used as that. It's not a great way to do it, but it can work. Mostly, this is used for your drivability. Then at the very top of this, as this table, can be used to increase the amount of torque your 100% wide open throttle is requesting from the car to make. So those are the two big areas: mid-range drivability, how your pedal feels on and off the pedal. Is it too touchy? Is it too sloppy? Um, and then on the top, how much am I actually requesting? Okay, so two things I want to say on that. The first is tuners can definitely make a car feel much faster by increasing the values in this range. Okay. That is going to all of a sudden, if I take and I double these values, it's gonna make my car feel fast as shit, because every time I blip the throttle to 20-30%, it's in the ECM going to be requesting all the torque, everything it can make, which is then going to open the throttle blade 100%. So that's where you get a disconnect between the throttle pedal and the throttle blade. It's totally fine. I don't care if the throttle pedal is down 30% and the blade's open 100 if it's the style of driving that I like, if it's the feel that I like. If I'm at 30% and it's open 100 and that's what a tuner is using to say, oh man, look how much more peppy your car is, that's garbage. So that's what I'll say for that. The second part of this is how we can kind of back calculate what we want in our wide open throttle region. Okay, so this is not in horsepower currently. It's in, and I know this, and if somebody, it's not kilopascals, but if somebody wants to put it in the chat, it's in a different. It's not in horsepower. It's in a different metric. So, but anyway, I do know the conversion rate, which is the important part. So what we want to do here is, if we go to the stock, we'll go to the stock file. All right. And so stock file, you have 210 units in the wide open throttle region. So what you want to do for that is, there's a calculation to see how much horsepower that's actually requesting when your throttle is 100% to the floor. So we'll go to the calculator. Okay, so that was 210. We're going to multiply that value by 1.34. Okay, it has more decimals, but we'll leave it at that. It's close enough. Okay, so that's going to bring us up to 281 horsepower. Shockingly enough, 280 horsepower is right about what these are supposed to make. Okay, so if we take that, that's at the flywheel or at the crank. So these are supposed to make 280 crank horsepower or thereabouts. You can then multiply that by drivetrain loss. So I'll go with somewhere between a manual transmission and an auto. Let's do 12%. And 281 times. Okay, and that's going to give us what we're roughly requesting from our pedal in actual wheel horsepower. Okay, which, shockingly enough, is about exactly what I see from a stock car, is somewhere between 235, 255 horsepower, depending on the dyno, depending on the day, yada yada, all those things. But this is a nice calculation that is very much used. And the reason I'm doing this this will be the last topic for torque management tonight. But the reason I'm doing it all last is because this then correlates into your virtual torque tables and your torque coefficients and calculations. And those are the things that you really have to massage on bigger builds especially, to really release everything and make, get that free feeling where there's no limiters. Those are the things you want to do. Okay. So if we're gonna kind of work that same calculation backwards. Or I could just close out the entire map and then we're not going to see anything. Let's get that back open because this is kind of one that I do enjoy. Chris, let's see. Yes, I will absolutely make you burgers. I'll make everybody burgers. Chris knows I make some mean pulled pork too. All right. Of course, I can't find my editor. Just so everybody knows, I'm currently on a 14-inch tuning laptop while doing this. So might have to come up with a little bit better system for next time, but we'll get there. Nice. Somebody's lighting off fireworks outside. That's good. Here, while you guys are waiting, would you rather see the logo or you rather see my face? Here, we'll switch it up. The editor's opening back up, so I'll have it back up in a minute. At least I thought it was opening back up. I think my computer just wants to kill me right now. All right. Oh well. It looks like I can't get the editor back open, but what I was going to show is how you can back calculate. Oh, it may have finally opened. You can back calculate what numbers roughly to put in your wide open throttle region by using 1.34 calculation as well as or conversion, as well as a rough removal of drivetrain loss type of thing to get wheel horsepower. All right, so let's see if we can get this back up now. Let's go. The editor is back. Let's get that back open. All right. All right, so you don't see all the green and differences and stuff right now, but that's okay. I don't have to open up. The compare file. Okay, so how do you back calculate this? What you want to do is let's use 400 wheel horsepower as a goal. Say you want to at least you think you have the setup that can make 400 wheel horsepower, and you want to at least request it and see where you go from there. So what we can do is go to our calculator, all right? And we want to make 400 to the wheels. So let's see if we say, okay, again, we'll use 12% for drivetrain loss, but you can do based on if you're a manual or auto and everything else, you can do your own calculation there. Okay, we come up with now 448 flywheel horsepower. All right. is what we would be requesting. And then let's divide that by our 1.34. Okay. 334 and change. Okay. So what that means is that if we want to make 400 horsepower to the wheels, so we want to request from our throttle at wide open 400 horsepower to the wheels, we need to enter a value of 334 in this field. Okay, that's the last tidbit I'll leave you guys for tonight as far as the torque management goes. There's a lot of other tables that are involved in this. If you noticed when I was, showing the, there's a lot of highlighted tables, a lot. I can tell you that me personally, I touch a lot of tables when I tune one of these cars, a lot. I don't know what everybody else does. I know somebody else who's also on this chat. He touches a lot of tables, and there's a good reason for it. What I can say though is you can make a car feel pretty fast and a lot different than stock by only touching a couple tables. It sucks because that is mostly why I think the community is where it is, and these engines have been given the bad name that they are. So what I'll show you real quick. Man, it's almost been an hour. Nice. You know what? I think I need some more bourbon before I get onto this one. Just do a little pour. So I'm going to show you one of my absolute favorite tuning tools. I've mentioned it before. It's for whatever reason on this platform, it's had like a really hard time picking up steam. If anybody, it's pretty dialed in right now, honestly. But if anybody wants to send me any logs to dial this in for all the different model years and transmissions and everything, feel free. Please, you can send them. I'll put it in the description or something. But givespeed3@gmail.com. You can send me anything there whenever you want. And all I need, if any of your tuners are concerned about sending logs, all I really need, if you don't want even boost or air fuel ratio to show up, you want to keep things as secretive as possible. It's not how I do things, but I understand. I definitely understand from a business perspective. But I really only need, I need the time. I need your tire diameter. I need your RPM. And that's about it. And that will spit out a log, a graph that looks something like this. Okay. So the, I would love to get more of those from people. It works great. It is a phenomenal tuning tool. So what I'll start with here, the graphs that you see right now, these are both stock cars, stock tuned cars, lightly modded, maybe an intake here, downpipe there, whatever. But they are two totally different cars, two different parts of the country, blah, 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 whatever. You can see how very close these two are. And the curve is almost exactly the same. You can see the boost curve, which is this one going upward, and the air fuel ratio curve, this going downward, almost exactly the same. And that's what you're going to get out of a stock tune every single time. what happens when a tuner comes in who doesn't do these often, but knows enough about the GM PCMs to be dangerous, especially a V8 tuner? What they're going to do, they're going to hopefully do three things, but probably not. They're going to come in and they're going to remove your torque limiters, or at least raise them to levels that are nearly unachievable. Okay, that's going to essentially take the top off the limit of the amount of torque that you can put down at any given RPM. That's the first thing they're going to do. Hopefully, the second thing they're going to do is they'll fix the this area right here. So you see how gradually this air fuel ratio comes down from the time you go full throttle until it finally really hits where we want, around 4,700 RPM, and then gets way too rich up top. Okay. Oh yeah, that's because I'm. Let's see, you can't see. Now you can probably see my cursor.